My name is Samantha Reed. I'm 32 years old, and I built a tech empire from scratch without using my family name. Not because I wanted to prove a point, but because I had no other choice. For most of my life, I was the invisible one. The daughter they ignored, the sister they underestimated, the guest who never quite belonged. While they sipped champagne and posed for photos at charity galas, I was learning how to survive being unwanted. And somewhere between rejection and resilience, I became someone they could no longer overlook. This isn't a story about revenge. At least, not the kind with fireworks and screaming matches. It's about quiet power. The kind that doesn't beg to be acknowledged. The kind that walks back into a room that once shut its doors and owns it. If you're going to show up looking like that, don't bother coming inside. That was how my own father greeted me at his birthday party. It was one of those Seattle mornings that looked polished, sunlight catching on slick pavement, the sky a rare, uninterrupted blue. But the quiet inside my penthouse was louder than ever. I stood by the window, looking down at the invitation card on the kitchen counter. The embossed gold ink glittered like it had something to prove. Edward Reed's 60th, formal attire, family and esteemed guests only. I wasn't surprised he made family sound optional. Tasha sat on the stool beside me, sipping her oat milk latte. "You sure you want to go?" she asked, her voice calm, eyes scanning me with that deliberate COO logic she always carried. "I don't know," I admitted. "I haven't seen them since the last fundraiser fiasco." That was, what, 2 years ago? When Vanessa told the board you were just a coder from a bootstrapped startup? She said I was lucky to be in the room. I exhaled slowly. Not lucky enough to be invited today, though. "You got the invitation?" I glanced back at the envelope. An assistant probably sent it out of habit. Trust me, if it were up to him, I'd be airbrushed out of the family portrait. Tasha tilted her head. "You going in that?" I looked down at my outfit. White tailored blouse, black cigarette pants, pointed flats. Minimalist. Sharp. Me. I'm not going in a ball gown to beg for their approval. I'm not 17 anymore. Tasha grinned. "Then go be you. And let's see what that does to their illusion." By evening, the family mansion loomed like a smug cathedral of wealth, perched over Lake Washington like it owned the view. Lights spilled from the windows, and strings of classical music wafted into the damp night air. The valet hesitated when I pulled up in my matte black electric coupe, unsure whether to take the keys. I handed them over anyway. Vanessa met me at the door, draped in shimmering navy silk, her hair curled and pinned just enough to look effortless. She looked me over from head to toe and arched one perfect brow. "That's what you chose?" she said, feigning concern. "Sam, it's Dad's 60th, not a TED Talk." "Good to see you too, Vanessa." She angled her body just enough to block the entrance. "Maybe next time give us a heads up before underdressing. We have press inside. It's a family event." "I am family." Edward's voice cut in from behind her, sharp as glass. "Not tonight, you're not." He stepped forward in a charcoal gray tux that looked like it hadn't been worn so much as sculpted around him. The same eyes I'd inherited, flint gray, unblinking, now stared through me. "Don't embarrass me, Samantha. Not like this." I swallowed the heat rising in my chest. I wasn't aware dignity had a dress code. He smiled, tight. "There are standards, and you know that." Vanessa smiled politely at guests watching from just inside the foyer, then turned back to me, her voice syrupy. "It's better if you don't come in. People might get the wrong idea." "You mean the idea that I belong here?" Edward stepped in again. "Enough. This isn't the time or place. Go home." It wasn't anger that clenched my fists. It was recognition. I'd lived this scene a dozen times, in boardrooms, family meetings, headlines that erased me from my own achievements. I took a slow step back from the threshold. Vanessa exhaled like she'd dodged a bullet. Edward had already turned away, talking to a senator as if I were never there. My phone was already in my hand. "Grant." I said the moment he picked up. There was the buzz of background chatter. He was probably still at the hotel, prepping his pitch for Monday. Samantha? Everything okay? Make sure you're at the party in 30 minutes, I told Grant. It's time they learned who I really am. Madam Reed, Grant said, loud and clear. I didn't realize this was a family event. Then he bowed, right in front of my father. The soft crunch of gravel under polished shoes reached me before I heard his voice. I stood alone near the garden patio, the faint glow of string lights outlining my silhouette as if the night wanted to give me a frame. Inside, the party swelled with champagne bubbles and polite laughter. Out here, I had silence, and the weight of rejection clinging to my coat like dew. Samantha? Grant's voice cut through the hush, tinged with confusion. I turned. His tall frame moved through the hedged path like a shadow, his suit slightly wrinkled from urgency, eyes already asking 1,000 questions. You didn't tell me this was your family. I don't usually lead with that, I said quietly. He blinked. Your father is Edward Reed? As in Reed Capital, Reed Maritime, Reed... Yes, I said, not smiling. And no, we don't really talk. He stepped closer, the gold light brushing across his cheekbones. But you're Samantha Reed. The Samantha Reed. You built NeuroSync from scratch. I shrugged. Under a different name. People take you more seriously when you don't come with legacy expectations. Grant rubbed the back of his neck. I feel like an idiot. You're not, I said. You're the only one here who actually sees me. He stared at me a moment longer, then nodded. Slow, like something inside him was recalibrating. Let's go. I raised a brow. Go? He offered his arm. You asked me to show up. I'm not letting you stand in the shadows. I hesitated. Then I took his arm. Inside, the main event hall glimmered like a crystal cave. The ceiling sparkled with chandeliers, violins sang from a corner quartet, and every table was filled with people who measured each other by net worth and last names. Conversations quieted as we walked in. The clinking glasses paused. Grant didn't slow down. Halfway to the center, he cleared his throat. Loud. Deliberate. Everyone, he said, allow me to reintroduce my business partner. Heads turned. Vanessa's wine glass trembled in her hand. This, Grant continued, is Madam Reed, Samantha Reed, CEO of NeuroSync, the visionary behind our latest acquisition. Murmurs spread like electricity through the hall. In the corner, Edward froze. His lips parted slightly, eyes darting from me to Grant, then back to me, as if the very architecture of his world had shifted. One man leaned toward another near the fireplace. You're telling me she owns the company Edward's been begging for funding? Samantha nodded moderately, not denying it. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I stood still, back straight, chin up, while every conversation in the room rewrote itself in real time. Vanessa stepped forward, her voice half a whisper. Sam, why didn't you ever say? I looked past her. Edward's jaw tightened, his hand clenched around a crystal tumbler. He stared at me like he's seeing a ghost. You're the reason Grant pulled his funding? ChatGPT John Noy. You said I'd never build anything worth keeping, I told him. Yet what you're holding on to now, that's because of me. Silence didn't fall over the ballroom. It collapsed. It folded inward like a dying star, sucking all warmth from the room. The violins had stopped. Even the champagne seemed to fizz more quietly. Edward still hadn't spoken. Grant's words hovered in the air, precise and merciless. She's the CEO of the company that just bought yours. I watched my father's expression carefully, searching for the man who had once towered over every room, every decision. But now? He looked small. Not physically. No, his presence was still broad and practiced. But the certainty in his eyes had cracked. Just slightly. She's an old business acquaintance, he muttered, as if saying it quieter would make it truer. Grant turned toward him with a calm that bordered on pity. You mean the woman who finalized your company's acquisition this morning? The ripple through the room was immediate. One woman choked on a strawberry. Someone in the back whispered, Acquisition? I caught Vanessa's eyes just long enough to watch her flinch, then lower her gaze. Her face was pale beneath her perfect makeup. Behind her, Linda Reed stepped forward, her pearls trembling against her collarbone. Sam, I didn't realize you were involved in tech at this level. Your father never said. I wasn't. I cut her off gently. At least not in any way he cared to acknowledge. Linda's face fell. You remember the scholarship, don't you? I said, shifting my voice to just above a hush, but loud enough for the circle to hear. The one I lost senior year. You both told me it was a blessing in disguise, that I wasn't leadership material, that maybe I should learn humility. Edward exhaled through his nose, clearly trying to regain control. This is not the time or place. It's the perfect time, I said. My voice didn't rise, but it carried. You looked at my clothes, not my character, I said slowly. Maybe next time you'll check who owns the building before you lock the doors. Edward's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Across from him, Vanessa turned away. Her shoulders curled slightly inward, her usual poise evaporated. I didn't enjoy seeing her break, but I didn't pity her either. She had watched me get stepped on, and she had smiled through it. Linda reached out as if to touch my arm, then stopped mid-motion. I met her eyes, conflicted, uncertain. And for the first time, I saw not judgment, but something dangerously close to regret. Grant shifted beside me and said, low and sharp, Funny how the girl they kicked out is the one they'll now answer to. I looked around the room, at the gilded faces and the crumbling egos. This isn't revenge, I said. This is justice. If I apologize, would you even believe me? That was the first time my father didn't sound like a man giving orders, but like a man asking for something he no longer owned. The door to his private study shut with a quiet click behind us, muffling the hum of the party still pulsing through the halls. The room hadn't changed in decades. Dark wood paneling, deep mahogany shelves filled with leather-bound volumes he probably never read, and the heavy scent of cigar smoke embedded in the very grain of the desk. His domain, his war room, and now, our battlefield. Grant paused near the doorway. I gave him a small nod. I'll be outside, he said softly and left. Edward walked behind his desk like a man searching for higher ground. He didn't sit, just stood there, fingers pressing into the polished wood, eyes lowered. For a moment, the silence felt intentional. Then I realized he didn't know how to start. I thought this room would feel different now, he finally said. It doesn't, I replied. It still smells like arrogance. He winced, almost imperceptibly, then looked at me. Not the dismissive glance I'd grown used to, but something slower, curious, unsteady. I asked you here, he said, clearing his throat. Because, well, I suppose you've earned more than a hallway confrontation. I said nothing. He tapped the desk with his knuckles, once. I know what you think of me. Do you? I asked, tilting my head. Because you seemed pretty sure I was invisible until about an hour ago. That's not... He stopped himself, tried again. That wasn't fair. What I did, cutting you off. You didn't just cut me off, I said quietly. You erased me. I was a line item to delete, an expense to write off. He looked away, jaw clenched. I wanted you to earn it, he muttered. No, I said. You wanted me to beg. His eyes snapped back to mine. I spent years crawling out of the pit you pushed me into, and now you're asking if I'd believe an apology? Edward sank into his chair then, the leather groaning beneath him. For once, he looked tired. Not old, not frail, just human. I underestimated you, he said. You didn't even try to estimate me. He let out a breath like it hurt to exhale. I spent years building an empire, only to realize I forgot how to build a relationship. You didn't forget, I said. You just thought your empire was more important. A beat passed, then another. The door creaked open and Linda stepped in, her movements tentative. She must have been listening outside. Her mascara was smudged at the corners, the first honest thing I'd seen her wear in years. I wasn't trying to win, I told them both, my voice softer now. Just to stop losing. Linda moved toward me, haltingly, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to cross the carpet between us. She didn't say anything, just looked at me with something raw flickering behind her gaze. Not shame, not quite pride, something in between. Edward broke the stillness. Would you ever come back to the family business? He asked. I didn't hesitate. I already own it, Dad. Why would I come back to what's already mine? You always had the spotlight, I told her. I just decided to stop standing in your shadow. The back terrace smelled like cut grass and expensive perfume. The wind off Lake Washington was cooler now, chasing away the last warmth of the party. Most of the guests had already left. The staff moved like ghosts in the distance, clinking glasses and folding white tablecloths into sharp, quiet squares. And there she was, Vanessa, standing alone beside the marble balustrade, her posture brittle as crystal. A single glass of champagne rested untouched near her hand. I thought she'd pretend not to see me. Instead, she turned, and the vulnerability in her expression startled me more than any insult she could have thrown. I didn't think you'd still be here, she said. I live in the city too, I replied, stepping closer. And now, apparently, I own half of what our father's name used to command. She winced at that, but didn't flinch. You were always better at staying quiet until it mattered. And you, I said, were always better at making sure no one forgot you were there. She laughed. Just once, a dry sound that faded as quickly as it came. I tried to get Grant's attention, months ago. I thought if I could bring him in as an investor, Dad would finally let me do more than smile at charity galas and pretend to care about foundation budgets. I didn't respond. I let the silence expand between us like a long breath. It never occurred to me, she said, more to herself than to me, that you were already in his world. You were looking up at the wrong lights, Vanessa. I wasn't on a stage. I was building the scaffolding behind it. She turned to face me fully then. Her makeup was still perfect, but her eyes had softened. The hardness she wore like armor had cracked at the edges. They only see you now, she whispered. It's like I don't exist unless I'm attacking you. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I spoke plainly. Then stop attacking, I said. Start becoming. Her lips parted slightly. The weight of my words settled between us, not as a reprimand, but as an invitation. For the first time in years, she didn't look like my rival. Just my sister, stripped of performance. She reached for the champagne glass, then thought better of it and let her hand fall. You always had the spotlight, I repeated gently. I just decided to stop standing in your shadow. A pause. Is it too late to become someone I'm proud of? She asked, her voice barely audible beneath the wind. I didn't answer right away. I thought of the years we spent circling each other like rival planets, speaking in the language of comparison and blame. That depends, I finally said. On who you start listening to, your heart or their expectations. Dinner's at 7, no dress code. That was the first invitation I got that didn't come with conditions. The house felt different this time. Quieter. Not in volume, but in spirit. No string quartet playing in the foyer. No staff flitting about with trays of sparkling wine. Just the clink of silverware being set on the dining table and the faint scent of something warm baking in the oven. Real food, not catered art. The dining room, once a space reserved for formality and performance, had transformed. Fewer chairs, simpler plates. A vase of wildflowers in the center instead of towering orchids. It felt like a home. I stepped in last. No fanfare, No eyes rolling. Just three faces turning toward me. My father, my mother, my sister. And for the first time, no one looked like they were bracing for impact. Edward rose, awkwardly, as if unsure whether to offer a handshake or a hug. He settled for pulling out a chair beside him. I sat. Linda wore soft pastels, her hair pulled back, hands fidgeting around a linen napkin. Vanessa emerged from the kitchen. Yes, the kitchen, with a tray of something unmistakably homemade. Pumpkin pie, she muttered, placing it near the end of the table. It's not perfect. It doesn't have to be, I said. We ate in hesitant silence at first, forks scraping, water being poured. No one mentioned the company. No one asked about shares, headlines, or scandal. It was strange, peaceful. Until Edward, clearing his throat, tried to sound casual. So, I read about this thing called neural biosynthesis. Apparently, it's the future of medical AI. I blinked. You've been Googling neurosync? Skimming, he admitted. Couldn't make sense of half the jargon, but I figured I'd better keep up. Can't let the boardroom get too far ahead of me, even if I'm no longer in it. Linda smiled gently. I saw your interview last week, the one with the lab walkthrough. Your eyes lit up when you explained the mapping algorithm. I looked at her. For once, she wasn't just watching me. She was seeing me. I was proud, she added, and there was no tremble in her voice this time. Just truth. Vanessa shifted, pushing a fresh napkin toward me. There's whipped cream, too. I didn't know if you still liked it. I do, I said. And that was it. Not an apology, not a grand gesture. Just effort. Just a table full of people trying. Edward raised his glass. To the daughter who reminded me that worth isn't worn. It's earned. The crystal clicked gently as we all lifted our glasses. No cheers, just a silent exchange of glances and something else that floated above us. Acknowledgement. Not of power, but of presence. That night, as I walked back through the quiet halls of my own penthouse, a message popped up on my phone. Neurosync has been shortlisted for Global Innovator of the Year. I stared at it, let the screen glow fade. I smiled, and didn't respond. For once, I wasn't chasing recognition. There was a time when she stood outside the doors of her own family home, denied, dismissed, and invisible. Now, she sat at their table, not because she fought her way in with rage, but because she refused to stay erased. Her silence had once been mistaken for weakness. Tonight, it was the loudest truth in the room. Samantha Reed didn't conquer her past with vengeance, but with clarity. In every moment they tried to shame her, she chose to build quietly. When they mocked her simplicity, she laid bricks of vision. And when they finally looked up, they found not the forgotten daughter, but the architect of their survival. What shattered wasn't just their perception of her. It was the myth that power only belongs to the loudest voice, the flashiest suit, or the most expensive invitation. In truth, it belonged to the one who showed up without needing applause, who reclaimed her place not by fitting in, but by standing apart. Vanessa, who once sneered from the pedestal of favoritism, now searched for her own reflection in her sister's steadiness. Edward, the patriarch who measured success in trophies and obedience, finally found himself humbled not by competition, but by consequence. Even Linda, ever poised, let her mask slip long enough to see her daughter through the fog of expectation. Samantha's triumph wasn't the applause she earned, the headlines she didn't chase, or the company she built from nothing. It was this. She no longer needed their permission to exist, and that was a victory no title could match. Her revenge wasn't loud. It was precise. Calculated. It didn't burn bridges, it outgrew them. And in doing so, she redefined what it meant to win. Because justice doesn't always wear robes or carry gavels. Sometimes it walks into a room in silence, sits down at the table it was once barred from, and changes everything simply by being there. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. No amount of rejection can silence a soul that knows its own worth. And sometimes the sweetest victory isn't proving them wrong, it's living so right, they can't look away. When injustice is met with unwavering courage, the final verdict can echo through a lifetime. So if you've ever been excluded, underestimated, or forced to dim your light just to make others comfortable, remember this: your worth is not granted by them. It's claimed by you, quietly, boldly, relentlessly. And sometimes the only thing standing between you and your seat at the table is the moment you decide to stop asking for one. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth.